It has been 1 year since Marvel Spider-Man 2 released. 1 year since we had to build up all that anticipation, all that excitement, and finally get our hands on this game. And a lot has changed since that year of release in terms of the public's opinion about Marvel Spider-Man 2, in terms of how much more content has been added into the game, and well, speaking of that specifically, in terms of the fact that we now got confirmation there's not going to be any DLC for Marvel Spider-Man 2. So I figured, now is a perfect time to reflect, look back on the year since this game came out, talk about my thoughts on the game since that year. When I reviewed this originally last year, I called it a masterpiece. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Do I still agree with some of the things that I said in my initial review? Well, I wanted to go over that here today. The first thing, though, that I wanted to talk about in regards to what's been happening surrounding Marvel Spider-Man 2 since last year is the discourse. Because if you go to the Reddit, if you look on Twitter, if you go anywhere on the internet, there are so many people out there that will convince you that, like, Insomniac shot their dog. They will convince you that this is the worst game ever conceived. It's made discourse in general, in like all forms of entertainment, really difficult to engage in good faith. And that's not just particular to Spider-Man 2. That's not particular to just games. It's movies, comics, all of it. We have gotten to a point where something is either the best thing ever or the worst thing of all time. And I'm the problem. I've done this too. Like I said, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a masterpiece. Maybe I don't agree with that today. But we have gotten to a point where when it comes to a game or a movie, if it's mostly bad, but there are some things that are good in there, we're just gonna talk about what's bad. Or hell, in the case of Marvel Spider-Man 2, if I'm looking at this, if I'm observing, I think that a lot of people in the community have a big problem with one specific thing, and that is the characterization of Venom and the handling of Venom in this game. Obviously, that kind of extends to the third act, that extends to just in general what they did with the symbiote, but for the most part, people have an issue with Venom in this game, and they have so much of an issue with Venom in this game that they overlook a lot of things that are really great about Marvel Spider-Man 2. Do you hear anybody talking about Kraven online and how good of a characterization that is? You don't, because if they were to try and convince you that it was really bad, most people would disagree. A lot of people that I have spoken to do agree that it is a really good interpretation of Kraven. Yes, there are things like, him using all this tech, and certainly you can add the complaint in there that they killed a lot of the villains from Spider-Man PS4 off screen, but you cannot deny how good of a performance it was. You cannot deny how menacing the character was, and you cannot deny how good of a send-off the guy had in that fight against Venom. For a lot of people, I can imagine that was when the game was really ramping up to be a masterpiece. It was when the game was ramping up to be everything that we had anticipated. It was just that, unfortunately, what happens like literally after that fight against Kraven is where the characterization of Venom starts to crumble. The whole thing about taking over the world, the whole thing about having the symbiote kind of cover the world, all that stuff for a lot of people, like, that's not Venom. That's not what the symbiote is after. And from there, it turned into kind of a spiral effect, because for a lot of people, again, it just got worse and worse and worse in that third act. Now, what do I think? Do I think that this is a bad characterization? Do I think that this is a bad interpretation of Venom? I don't think it's like terrible, but I certainly don't think it's among the best. What I think is that this is not Eddie Brock, that this is not the symbiote from the comic books, that this is not the storyline from the comic books. This is a new take on the character, on Venom. And so with that, there are going to be new motives. With that, there are going to be things that we aren't familiar with as fans of the character from the comic books. Insomniac tried something different. Unfortunately, it was radically different. It didn't land for a lot of people. But again, we are overlooking so much of what's good about this game. Like, I am sorry, it's not up for debate. You cannot argue. The gameplay and the open world are like objectively better in Marvel Spider-Man 2. You've got slingshots, you've got loop-de-loops, the swinging is faster, you have web wings now in the game, the open world is bigger, Peter's got different air tricks now, similar to what Miles had in his own game. There's swing assist too. Now you can customize how much the game is going to steer you in the right direction, and rather just let the control be more in your hands. These are all things that you did not have available to you in Marvel Spider-Man 1. So why are we just pushing it aside? Why are we looking past these really good things? This is, again, the problem. People have an issue with Venom. People have an issue with the symbiote, which I totally understand. But we are now using that as a way to say, The entire game is bad. Another big issue that I had, I pointed this out in my review, and it's an issue that I still do have, and that's the suit selection. I'd say particularly for Peter. Miles has a really solid selection of suits, and a lot of them come from the comic books, but a big majority of Peter's suits are either returning from the first game or like his entire collection of suits from the movies. I think with the latest update, adding in his Peter B. Parker Spider-Verse suit, he has literally every look that Peter has had in the movies. Which, on one hand, like that's cool for people who are a fan of the different interpretations of the character in those films. But on the other hand, like, where's my sensational Spider-Man? Come on, well, my Ben Reilly fans are suffering. There's so many cool suits from the comic books that just didn't make it in the game, and I don't know why. It was such a huge bummer in my opinion. And yeah, there were tons of missing features from day one. It is kind of unacceptable. It does paint the picture that this game was pushed out the door. In Spider-Man Miles Morales, we had the option to change the time of day, to change as well the level of snow that there was in the open world, and yes, you could replay missions. It was very weird that on day one, Spider-Man 2 just had none of that. And it was also unfortunate that we had to wait quite a while, but do not downplay the reason why. Insomniac, in December of last year, suffered a hack, all right? A lot of stuff was put up online that I imagine they didn't want online that I don't want to see. And what it has led to is a lot of issues in the community. People judging unfinished products as though they are ready to go. And unfortunately, expectations are set and people are thinking that we are gonna get something that, well, we aren't. And it's the reason why these studios hold on to these secrets and they don't just immediately announce them, because in the games industry, when you're working on a massive IP like Spider-Man, things are changing constantly. And so yeah, Insomniac went through something incredibly terrible, and we cannot just say,
oh, that was in December, they're probably fine now.
None of us know the severity of the situation. And if they wanted to release New Game Plus in December like it was initially planned, if they wanted to release a bunch of new suits right away, I'm sure they would have done it. So I don't understand why we can't look at this and say, okay, it's taken really long. I wonder why. I wonder what they must have been going through since December that has caused a ton of setbacks for the studio. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know. I just feel like in general, a lot of people on the internet have lost kind of sympathy or empathy for some of these developers and what they have had to go through in the last year, when at the end of the day, like, they're just making silly little Spider-Man games for our entertainment, all right? Like, these are games that are meant to be played and enjoyed and to have fun with. And a lot of people out there are treating it as though it's like life and death. So when Insomniac goes through what they went through, that should have been a moment where the entire community came together and said, hey, you know what? We got our issues with the game, but Insomniac has delivered a lot for the fans. We have our empathy, we have our sympathy towards you. It's really a bummer to me that people didn't want to do that. And at least some people did. I know there's a lot of people out there who poured in their support for Insomniac during that time. I'm not trying to say that this is like the entire community, but I feel like at a certain point, a lot of people just forgot that that was a thing that happened. And then, yeah, okay, so we're back to now. We're back to a couple of days ago, New York Comic-Con. They announced that Marvel Spider-Man 2 is coming to PC in January of 2025. And they confirmed in the PlayStation blog that announced that there's not going to be any story DLC for Spider-Man 2. This, for me, is kind of where I was most disappointed, because the story is shorter than Spider-Man 1, and there are a lot of loose threads in those side missions. Loose threads that I was certain were going to be resolved in some way with a DLC, with an expansion. And I think part of the reason that I had set that expectation was because when you look at some of the other first-party PlayStation titles, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, these games got expansions. They got DLC. Horizon's DLC was like a full-on paid expansion with a new explorable area, new missions, new characters, the works. God of War was a bit smaller scale, so when you look to Spider-Man 2, we really could have gotten one or the other. It's baffling to me. It's crazy that we didn't get either. Now, a lot of people in the community have started to speculate, and maybe we're on the copium again after, not getting DLC, but people have speculated that those resources to make a DLC, to make an expansion, were instead diverted to making something like a Miles Morales-sized game, but this time for Venom. And John Paquette, he hinted before Spider-Man 2 released that a Venom game was something they would absolutely explore, so I can 100% see that being the case. Another part of the community, though, is speculating, and this is is the piece that I kind of agree with, that the team has just diverted and put all hands on deck with Wolverine. The Wolverine game is a new experience. It does not have the foundation of the last Spider-Man game to build off of. It's probably going to have completely different gameplay, unlike anything we've experienced in the Spider-Man franchise. And so with that, a lot of work is going to go into it. So instead of spending all this time on Spider-Man 2, instead of making a DLC expansion for the game, maybe they just moved on and said, we just got to get everybody on this Wolverine game so that we can make sure it's as polished of a product as possible. And to be honest with that, there's a very real chance we could see this Wolverine game come out next year. Remember, when it was announced, it's a completely different team working on it, separate from the team that worked on Marvel Spider-Man 2. Insomniac is a big studio. They got a lot of people working there and managed to get Miles Morales out the door not too long after Spider-Man PS4. So since 2021, it's been about 3 years. We've had a lot of time to work on this Wolverine game. Maybe next year we could see that game come out, or at the very least we can see some marketing for it start to get pushed out the door. I just hope that Wolverine doesn't suffer the same fate as Spider-Man 2, in that it was something that missed some key features that people would have really wanted because it was pushed out that door way too quick. So in conclusion, it's been a year since Spider-Man 2 released, and there are plenty of things that I unfortunately don't love about the game, but there's still so much that I really do love. 2023 was one of the craziest years of my life. Multiple videos hitting trending on YouTube, something I've never done before. Meeting a bunch of the folks at Insomniac, getting to interact with them and talk about these games that they have made, seeing the passion that they have for these games, meeting a ton of you guys, hearing what you guys think about the content that I make. 2023 was just absolutely insane. And so this game is special to me. The experience playing it for the first time is special to me. It's something that I don't ever want to be taken away. And I know some people are going to dislike that. I know some people are going to call me a shill. The Reddit for Spider-Man, they hate me over there. But it is what it is. There's a lot that I love about Spider-Man 2, and there's nobody out there that's going to be able to convince me not to love it. Do I have some issues? Yes. Do I want some improvements for Spider-Man 3? 1000%. Do I think that there was a lot of good that I also want to be expanded upon to make even better for the next game? Also, yes. And I feel like as a community, it's really important for us to find a balance in pointing out both of those things. If you want the best possible product, yelling, "This thing is not going to get that for you." If you're hoping for Marvel Spider-Man 3 to be a perfect cap on this trilogy, if you're hoping for Spider-Man 3 to be everything you wanted Spider-Man 2 to be, then just smearing your face across the keyboard and yelling a bunch of nonsense on the internet, it's not going to get the job done. Constructive criticism, feedback that's provided with respect to the developers, those are the ways that you are going to get the improvements that you're looking for. Those are the ways that your voice is going to be heard. And the same goes with the positives. Just sitting there and saying, oh, it's great, it's not going to get anything done to make those good things even better. Why is this thing or that thing great? What makes it so good? We have to delve deeper. We got to engage in discourse in good faith. I'm just asking the community to try. And with that being said, let me now kick it to you guys. Sound off with the thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about Marvel Spider-Man 2 1 year later? Are there things you liked about the game before that you maybe don't like now? Are there things you didn't like about the game before that you've come around on now? Sound off with your thoughts in the comments. I've been Caboose. I'll see you guys later.